Hey, hello everybody. This is Jack Hammer, and today I'm joined by Rob Schuh. Rob, if you're not following his YouTube channel already, you need to get over there. He does a fantastic job, and it's funny, Rob's got one of those cameras. I was laughing yesterday while I was watching the 49er game yesterday on television because there was a sideline shot with the sideline reporter, and it reminded me of Rob because if you look at how great that camera is and how crisp his face is while the rest of the background is blurred out. That's exactly the shot they had of, I think it was Tom Rinaldi, who was the sideline reporter yesterday. And there was a point at the beginning of the game where they were talking to him, and it reminded me exactly of your camera, man.
I appreciate that, Jack. Yeah, that's what I was going for. That's exactly what I was trying to accomplish with the camera. So I am glad that that's the impression that it leaves.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a high professional stuff. That's why you deserve all the followers that you're getting on your YouTube channel. You do a great job, and that's why when you reached out to me today, I jumped at the opportunity to come on and chat with you a little bit today.
I am absolutely looking forward to this. I mean, what an epic game yesterday. I'm fired up to talk Niners all afternoon.
Oh yeah, no, it was a fantastic game. What an up and down experience that whole game was, and I know we have a number of different topics we want to hit, and our time's a little limited with the Shanahan conference call coming up. So let's just jump right into it. We're talking about. I mentioned that up and down that up and down game yesterday, and what else would you talk about when you talk about up and down other than Jimmy Garoppolo's performance against the Rams yesterday?
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, I saw that game yesterday as a microcosm of the entire season. It was one of those that started slowly. It looked ugly. It didn't look like it was going to end the way you wanted it to. And Jimmy Garoppolo's play fluctuated pretty wildly throughout. And that felt like the 2021 season as a whole. And that has been what I think has created this polarizing topic around Jimmy Garoppolo. And the takeaway for me is that much like many topics that become polarized and you have two opposite camps that are fighting over opposing views of the same topic, with Jimmy Garoppolo, I tend to see both of those extremes as being a bit unfounded, that the truth is much more close to the middle of it, where Jimmy Garoppolo is a quality quarterback in the National Football League and can deliver in clutch moments, but also will provide some inconsistent play at times.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly what we saw yesterday. It's everything we've seen from Jimmy Garoppolo rolled into 1 3-hour game. I called it earlier in the season. I started calling it the Jimmy Garoppolo experience. I think probably around the game against the Packers, where it was just up and down and awful at the beginning and got better as the game went on. And then you had a bad mistake and so on. But that's what we saw yesterday. It was in effect from the very beginning. The opening drive wasn't all that bad, but then he gets hit and fumbles the ball in the next possession. And then the flutter ball down the middle for an interception. And then from that point on, it looked like it was all going to be good. It was uphill throughout trending in an upward direction there that last 38 seconds of the first half, and then the way they opened up the second half, and then just when they look like they're going to score some points and take the lead for the first time in the game, bam, he hits you right across the face like a Mike Tyson uppercut, and and then on top of that, the Rams just go right down the field and take the lead, and it's just. For him to then come back and make the plays that he did at the end in the end of the fourth quarter right there. I mean, did you think that the Flyers were going to be able to go down the field with a minute and 27 seconds to go and no timeouts at that point from their own 12?
I'll be honest. I mean, much like throughout the vast majority of that game, I remained hopeful throughout. I was hopeful that the 49ers would come back from a 17-0 deficit. I was hopeful that the 3 points toward the end of the first half were enough to sway the momentum. And I was hopeful that we had enough left in the tank from the defense to carry through with a second half comeback. So when that rolled around with under 1:30 remaining, I was hopeful that the Niners could make it. But if I had to bet on it, I don't know how much money I would have been willing to put down on the Niners completing it, because it was a pretty miraculous 88 yard. I had that right the first time. Touchdown drive. I mean, just wild in regard to a finish like that, in particular after having struggled early in that game. But that's the magic of Jimmy Garoppolo. That's the beauty of, him emulating a goldfish where he forgets those earlier interceptions and is able to move on. Next play, right? There's something to be said for that. And it frustrates me to no end because, you follow 49ers Twitter and it goes ebbs and flows pretty violently throughout the game. But you watch the negative reactions to the turnover plays, and those are warranted, right? I mean, certainly it was 3 possible turnovers. I don't know how we came up with that fumble. That was just the miraculous recovery in my book. But had it been those 3 turnovers and had we lost, that would have been the storyline for it. But it's so hard for those people that see the negatives of Jimmy Garoppolo to also acknowledge the clutch plays, the ability to deliver on critical third downs, and hitting small windows over the middle of the field. And to me, that last drive epitomized why you do have to appreciate Garoppolo, his ability to deliver in those moments.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's my feeling of Garoppolo as well. You have the ups and downs, but for whatever reason, for the most part, he just seems to be able to make the plays in the key moments when you kind of doubt him the most and when you don't expect him to make it. I mean, you don't expect him to make that, and he does it. You kind of expect him to maybe do it in the Super Bowl in 2019, and he doesn't. And it's back and forth, but the darn guy, you want to kind of throw him out, but at the same time, as soon as you want to get rid of him, he comes back and he makes the play and to get you down the field. And you look at that 88-yard drive that you talked about to tie the game up. And the one to me that just kind of stuck out was the throw to Debo Samuel down the right sideline. Yes. That play, you can see Garoppolo so many times when he looks somewhere and he doesn't throw it right away, you kind of hold your breath because usually he's not very good when he has to reload and he's looking to his left. You can see him even that was like everything that you don't expect from Jimmy Garoppolo because he steps up through the rush and then he sees it and he puts it on him. And the way that play looked in a lot of ways, like from the way the ball was, from the time he threw it till the catch and the tackle, reminded me of the season opener when he hit Debo Samuel down the right sideline in Detroit. It looked, with the ball that was underthrown, he's having to stop. He's catching it, stopping, and then, able to run through people. That's what that play reminded me of so much. It was a great comeback for the 49ers. Good respond from Garoppolo, and then just a real good all around. And I agree with you on the Twitter stuff. You have the ups and the downs, and you have strong opinions on both sides. And there's a side over here that's right. That's on one end. There's a side over here that's on the other. And the truth is in the middle, like you said, and it's always been that way. And it's funny. It's fun trying to watch people try to play in the middle while they're on one side or the other of the argument. And I fall on one particular side probably more than the other. But it's and you talk about Twitter and kind of the ebbs and flows throughout the game. Hey, I made a complete clown out of myself yesterday, early in the game when the score was 17-0, saying that the game was over. And then when Jimmy Garoppolo threw the interception, the first interception, telling them, saying just go ahead and put Lance in because this was awful. So I'm right there. And then I came back and made fun of myself afterwards after the game. But yeah, we all make those goofy comments in the heat of the game because that was and I think it comes out for me more in games like in yesterday's game where it's a really important game. It's like a playoff game, and that's when those emotions come. Because the last time I made a stupid comment like this game's over with when it's 17-0 was when the 49ers were down 17-0 to Atlanta in 2012.
Oh, all right. Similar results here.
And the result was the same. Maybe I need to start doing that every week at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, right. Well, so I'm interested to hear your take on how much blame Garoppolo deserves for the turnovers and then for the credit for being able to pull it back. Because as I saw it, when I went back through and rewatched it, I thought the first interception was a little more brutal when I saw it live. And in the replay, as I noticed Travis Benjamin at least being even with or a step beyond Ramsey. I know Ramsey has incredible closing speed, so he may have been able to close that gap. But Jimmy obviously gets hit in the chest as he's throwing it. You have to assume that impacted the velocity of the pass. Had he gotten it out on time, it's possible that he would have led Travis Benjamin, and that could have been 7. So in rewatching it, that one wasn't as atrocious of a throw as I initially thought.
Yeah, when you watch it and when you watch the replay, then you see it a little bit better. In real time is when I tweeted that out about,
Yep.
getting them out of there, because I hadn't seen the replay yet. I saw the play occur, and I just reached down and started, updating. And yeah, I think you're right. There's the hit to the chest, which is kind of a little bit of why the ball flutters out of his hand. Plus, he doesn't have whatever he's dealing with his thumb. I think that plays a role in how easy the ball got knocked out of his hand on the fumble. It probably plays to the fact that when he got hit there and he's getting hit in the chest, the ball just flutters as bad as it does. But at that point in the game, they're not showing any signs of life. I think it was 17-0 at that point. Maybe I'm wrong, but
it was either 10-0 or 17-0 at that point.
Yeah, and it just felt like the game was slipping away, even though it was only the first half.
Yeah, I mean, it did. I got caught in one of those tweets as well. I mean, it was a little more, thankfully, it was one that was easy to walk back because down 17-0, I tweeted out that the 49ers' best chance at a comeback probably involved inserting Trey Lance, given the shot plays. And I stand behind that I think if you're down 17-0, more often than not, it's going to require a player at quarterback who can generate the chunk plays. I think you witnessed sort of the perfection that was needed by Jimmy Garoppolo with his limitations within this offense. And it was that magical balance of things only he can do and Kyle Shanahan scheming up a game plan that played to his strengths perfectly.
Yeah, and I think that leads us right into kind of the next topic that I wanted to talk about, or we're discussing. And because it's the comeback and how they came back, and Jimmy Garoppolo definitely played a role in that. But the 49ers MVP, fill in the blank, who do you think that is? And I think I kind of gave a little bit of a leading answer as to who I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've got to go with Debo Samuel and the season that he's having. I mean, when you look at, I think it's over 1,750 yards from scrimmage, combined rushing and receiving, throwing the touchdown. He's now in rare company with Gale Sayers as the only players to hit the touchdown marks of 1 passing, 8 receiving, and then the 6 touchdowns rushing. So, I mean, rare company to be there with Gale Sayers. To me, that performance that he has had all year long, the reliance upon him as the primary weapon in so many of these critical games, I got to hand it to Debo Samuel.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I bring this, part of the reason I bring this up is because if you follow Twitter, you follow sites like PFF, everybody's talking about Trent Williams being the MVP for the 49ers. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Trent Williams hasn't had a good season. He's a very good left tackle. He's one of the top left tackles in the league. But there's no doubt in my mind that the MVP of the 49ers offense, or the 49ers team in general, is Debo Samuel. The changes that they made with Debo Samuel in the second half of the season, heading into the Rams game, that's I think what's given them the opportunity to move forward and become what they've done and win. Was it 7 of their last 9 games of the season? Samuel's he's been on a roll. He scored 14 total touchdowns this year, I think you said, which is the most from a 49er since Terrell Owens scored 14 back in 2002. So, and he's in the Hall of Fame, right? So he's putting up Hall of Fame level numbers within the 49ers organization as well. And you watch what he does, and it's not just that the catches are great and the run after the catch, but you see him run the ball up the middle, and you see him running over linebackers. You see him run off to the side yesterday on the touchdown. It's not even an outside run. It starts off inside. He breaks it to the outside, but you see him once he gets to the edge, they're not going to bring him down. They're not, the only way he gets tackled is if he gets squared up. He's just such a good player, so dominant, and he's just really taken the 49ers to another level over the second half of the year because of his play.
He really has. And I view Debo as the tone setter for the offense, an offense that wants to physically impose their will on the opposing defense. And Debo really just emulates that theory. I mean, he just is that individual. And it's in everything that he does. In that game against the Rams, the first rushing touchdown to start the second half, to me, changed the entire game, set the tone for the comeback. Yeah, the 3 points in the first half were critical to set up exactly what unfolded in the second, but it was that first drive completing with that Debo Samuel run, to me, that just swung the momentum firmly in the 49ers' favor. And as I said, with being a tone setter, he is just delivering hits on defensive backs. He does get up to speed extremely quickly. I believe it was Dan Orlovsky was tweeting out today, is there anyone in the league that gets up to his maximum speed faster than Debo Samuel? And I just think it's those huge tree trunks he's got for legs and the torque he is able to generate when he puts his cleat into the ground and pushes off. He delivers those hits on defensive backs, even the one in the beginning of the game where it was Ramsey coming in, delivering the first blow. It appeared Ramsey got the worst of that hit. He bounced off of Debo, and it seemed, even though Ramsey got up chirping, it seemed to me as if Debo was the one that won that collision, and it just got progressively better going forward, even though the Rams sold out to really take away that edge rushing.
Yeah, I agree. That was one. And then on top of that, you take into, we didn't even talk about the fact that he threw a touchdown pass yesterday, right? And that's he threw the touchdown pass to give to tie the game up. And that one's funny because when I saw that play is, I think, the same play that the 49ers, very similar, if not the same play that the 49ers ran a few weeks back when he threw it, I think it was against the Falcons, maybe, if you remember correctly, when he tried to throw it. I think it was to Ayuk, but it was a bad throw. It was whatever.
Right.
And after the game, Shanahan was asked about that, and he made a comment about that. That's not the last time that Debo's going to throw the ball, or something to that effect. You're going to see him throw it again. It all worked out perfect for the 49ers yesterday. Debo Samuel, just a stud. And I don't know how much more you can really say about the guy. I think that kind of sums it up. The guy's the best player on the 49ers and probably should be talked about as the best player in the league when it comes to the offensive side of the ball.
Absolutely. And to your point about Trent Williams, I'm not taking anything away from his season and the fact that I would argue probably the most dominant left tackle in the league this year. But when it comes to Debo Samuel, there's just something about the energy that he brings to the team. And I see it carry forward for this guy. I think it starts in mindset for a player. If you follow Debo Samuel on Instagram, he is consistently posting positive messages on a morning basis, every day, day in, day out. He is affirming his positivity in the way in which he's going to attack the day. And so I think he changed his workout routine. He changed the way in which he treated his body in the offseason. He changed his mindset, and it has come through. He's earned himself a monster payday. He's going to deserve every penny he gets in the extension that I'm sure is coming his way this offseason.
Yeah, 100%. And then just kind of, skipping off of this, Fable asked the question, and I think it's accurate. I think it's a harder question is, who is the defensive MVP on the 49ers? I know we didn't set up this one, but what do you think? Who would you say? This is a tough one, really.
It is tough. I think the default is to go with Nick Bosa. And even though he hasn't produced quite the statistics you would want over the last 3-week stretch, you look at the amount of attention he dictates from defenses and how that has opened up the remainder of the defensive line to step up and do exactly what they've done. Looking at the emergence of Arden Key, contributions from role players like Samson Ebukam rolling into form, Willis, Eric Armstead. I think that he's the most consistent player start to finish when you look at the season as a whole. So I think I'd have to give him the nod.
Yeah, I think you're right. And then Bosa does. He opens up everything along that defensive line. He makes it easier for everybody. That's why Arden Key's having a career year. Yesterday, you saw Eric Armstead, who everybody just rips, right? Eric Armstead goes out there and he gets 2.5 sacks, almost matching the total that he had for the whole season in just yesterday's game. And although Bosa walks away with only a half of a sack yesterday, him and Armstead tie for the team lead in quarterback hits on the day. They were all over Stafford throughout the game. But I think you have to go with Bosa, although you can make a very strong argument for Fred Warner as well, because it doesn't matter who plays next to Fred Warner. Those other linebackers all look good, and I think it's because of the fact that they have an all-pro in between them, kind of setting them up.
That's an interesting one because people fell out of favor with Fred, or Fred fell out of favor with people early on in the season. And I don't think it was because he was playing poorly. It just he was missing the big plays, the star plays, the turnovers, the sacks, just wasn't getting those statistics that you need to be in the running for, an MVP conversation or a Pro Bowl vote. And so I think people got down on him because he had just earned that huge payday. But what we've seen in the resurgence of the defense in the second half of the season, I do think you have to give a tip of the cap to Fred Warner. And it's fair to wonder, what type of adjustments there were in having a new defensive coordinator in there. Fred being the quarterback of the defense, I'm sure there was a learning curve. And that reflects in the early season for the 49ers, as does the fact that they were an inconsistent team to begin the year. As everything rounded into form, the defense really surged, and I think you saw the reemergence of Fred Warner in that second half.
Yeah, I think the thing with Fred Warner and the reason that people were giving him such a hard time, especially over the beginning of the season, he may ought to be contract. And everybody loves the guy that's the underpaid player until they get paid. And once they get paid, they start looking at him differently. And yes, and then on top of that, because now he's got that contract, he becomes more of a focal point of the defense.
Right.
And what people are watching. And when the defense is getting gouged for runs, he becomes the problem when it's not necessarily just him. There's other guys throughout. And you said, I think there was a little bit of a learning curve for the entire defense. They were really struggling with, big football term here, the run fits in the beginning of the season as a defense. They got better at that as they went along. The defensive line got better once they moved on from the last year's first round draft pick. They actually improved because they're better without him. And just, I think all those things kind of play together and led to an increase of play of Warner. And I think people, as the season wore on, being more impressed or liking what they were seeing from him more than worrying about his contract because he just gotten paid.
Yeah, absolutely. And you do have to give the nod to DJ Jones and Eric Armstead for just stepping it up the second half of the season in regard to the run game. I agreed that it was around the time that Kinlaw stepped out and you had those two taking over the primary defensive tackle spots in those early downs that the resurgence of the run defense occurred. And the fact that DJ Jones was able to stay healthy through the end of the year, unlike previous seasons, helped down the stretch. The big man came through.
Yeah. It was the run defense and the pass rush really picked up once they made that change. But let's jump over. I had a comment here, and this is going to actually lead us to, we're going to change our topic into something else because Jagueo 56, thank you for the donation to start off with, says the first one to wish you gentlemen a happy new year. Thank you. Whatever happens going forward, proud that the team kept moving forward. Mad props to Coach Kyle Shanahan. And that was actually a topic that we were going to discuss. We might as well bring that up now since he brought this up. Credit to Kyle Shanahan. I'm not sure about you, but I'm somebody who has given Kyle Shanahan a lot of grief since he took over here with the 49ers. Just one thing after another because of the fact that they weren't winning and those kinds of things. But you look at what the 49ers have done this season and the way they just play for this guy, you've got to give him the props because it doesn't matter what's happening. You go back even to 2018 and 2020, those lost seasons when we were really hammering on him. But those teams always played hard. And that's what we've seen happen. They were at 3-5 this year. They fought their way back to the playoffs. And I think he deserves a ton of credit for that and also for the adjustments that he's made.
He does. And I'm sort of the opposite camp. I think I have been in Kyle Shanahan's corner for most of his tenure. I'm not shy on criticizing the individual. I do see certain aspects of his leadership style specifically that I wish he would address. I have seen improvement from him this season, maturation from the beginning of the season till the end. I thought that during that 3-5 stretch, there were points where I was wildly frustrated by the way in which he interacted with the media. And I thought that he handled it somewhat poorly in facing the public because everything that was coming up, the questions he was facing, seemed relevant. They all seemed fair questions from the media. And yet Kyle Shanahan acted as if he shouldn't be bothered in answering these. And so it was limited criticism from me. But to your point of holding this team together, I mean, the idea that they lost 4 in a row, we're sitting there at 3-5 in early November, coming off of a loss to a mediocre Arizona team flooded with backups headed by Colt McCoy. The fact that they stayed together and made that 7-2 run overcoming significant injuries along the way, overcoming significant mistakes along the way. I do think that's a credit to Coach Shanahan and just the ability to keep everyone on the team focused, moving forward, eyes on the prize. There's something to be said for that. And I think you have to acknowledge that he has a firm grasp on the locker room because of the fact that he was able to make it through that gauntlet. I mean, lesser teams, lesser coaches would have folded and packed it in at that point.
Yeah, and I know what you're talking about when you bring up Shanahan and his dealings with the media, those kind of things. Definitely, I've taken him to task recently with his getting angry with a question from Eric Branch about Shanahan's thumb, and him getting snippy about it. But it was
Right.
that fair question given the situation, the way that it all played out. But as I think the last point you made really speaks to this season and Shanahan overall. He has a really good feeling for what is happening in his locker room.
Yes.
You know, everybody from the outside, myself included, we look at the situation. We looked at the situation at the quarterback position going in, and we're just like, this is going to be a mess. Who's going to be the leader? You just use all this stuff on this guy, and how is he going to make this work? And I think without having a strong leader in place, you would have a mess. We saw it be a
Yes.
mess in Chicago, right? They tried to do this in Chicago with Andy Dalton and their rookie quarterback, and it was a complete mess. And the coach is fired. We say Shanahan do it, and he's successful, just like Andy Reid was successful doing it back in 2017. And so that part of it, I was one of those who said that the Niners needed to trade Jimmy Garoppolo, before the draft or as soon as they got that pick done. I think I was wrong with the way that they've been able to juggle it this year. And I think the other part of it too, and we're going to get to this in a future question, is they were able to do both and succeed at both. They're in the playoffs, and I think Trey Lance got better.
It is interesting to consider before we hit that super chat, just to say that if one or two things go differently in that Rams game and the Niners lose that one, the narrative of how successful this season would change wildly. Like it's just remarkable the margin for error in the NFL. It is so small, so minute. But we're staying positive because the Niners are playing the Cowboys this week.
No, you're right. That's 100%, right? That's the difference. Garoppolo hits a couple of passes. Debo Samuel comes off with some great runs, and Ambry Thomas makes the pick, and all the everything that could have been a problem, and all the it's no longer Shanahan's a bum. Now
Right.
Shanahan's the hero. You're 100% right on that. Real quick, Richie, thank you for the donation, Richie. And I know this kind of goes off of the topic from earlier on Debo Samuel, but it also plays a little bit into Kyle Shanahan too. Hey guys, do you think how Kyle is using Debo in the offense is what he envisioned for Jalen Hurd if he could have been healthy?
I think that it's a portion of what Debo is doing in the pass game could fit into what I would envision from Jalen Hurd. But I don't think that Jalen had the acceleration of Debo Samuel. I don't think that Jalen has the same ability to hit the corners in the way that Debo can because of that acceleration. And so could he be used in the run game? I mean, obviously he had the background as a running back. I would see him more between the tackles than the outside zone personally, but we never got to see it. And so that's just my vision of what I thought it could be. I think he fit more into, providing the flexibility of a tight end, but at the wide receiver spot. That idea of that offensive flexibility that Shanahan covets, where within one formation, he can run completely different concepts, completely different looks, because he has these gadget players, not gadget players, but Swiss Army knife players that are capable of taking it in multiple directions. Hurd, I thought, would have been more as a big move tight end, as opposed to what Debo is bringing in the duality of rushing and receiving.
Yeah, and I agree with you on that point. I think that the key takeaway from what you said is the Swiss Army knife, or the other term that you could use is like the positionless player, right?
Yes, that's what I was searching for.
You can just kind of line them up anywhere, and I think that is what Hurd was. They envisioned Hurd as that kind of a player, a guy that can line up wide, they can line up inside. Think of as a maybe a little bit more of a faster George Kittle, right? Because George Kittle is a guy who they use as a running back at times. They do all kinds of different things with him. And that's, I think, what they were looking to do with Hurd. And the 49ers got lucky with Debo Samuel in 2019. And, we're seeing the results of that and how well he's going on for the 49ers.
It'll be fascinating to see if this use of Debo continues going forward. Next season. I definitely think it will into the playoffs, but it'll be interesting to see if next season we see the same use of him as a running back.
I would think that going into next year, you're going to see if Raheem Mostert was healthy, he wouldn't be utilized the way that he's being utilized, because Raheem Mostert would be getting all those carries, and they would be utilizing Debo more as a receiver, more as maybe like the jet sweeps and those kind of things. So I think it'll all depend on where they go forward. I wouldn't have a problem with it being Debo being used the same way, because I think it's what he does best. He is built like a running back, but he can play wide receiver, and give him the ball. His touches have gone up slightly. I mean, if the guy can't carry the ball 1 or 2 times more a game, then what are we doing, really? Right? Especially with a guy who's built like Debo Samuel is. I think Debo, if you asked him, he'd probably tell you just to keep giving me the ball. He'd probably want the ball 25 times if you asked him. That's just me putting words in his mouth here.
I can almost guarantee that's what Debo would say.
Yeah. So just kind of to jump over to another topic that we had set up for today. There's been a lot of talk about the 49ers and how I alluded to it on our previous discussion, but there's been a lot of folks that have been talking about this being a wasted season for the 49ers. And I wanted to get your take on it, see what you felt. And I definitely have my opinion that I'd like to share on this one too. But is this a wasted season for the 49ers if they don't win the Super Bowl?
Interesting. So that last piece, for me, no, it's not a wasted season. To me, it's a very clear answer. But again, going back to a couple of plays going differently on Sunday, losing that game, not making the playoffs, then I think maybe you are in a different narrative. If the 49ers had fallen short, failed to make the playoffs, there would have been a very loud uproar from 49er faithful talking about how it was a wasted season. And I think that would have been hyperbole. It would have been emotional. It would have been a reaction to not making the playoffs. And I think that's even more true considering just how important it is to be able to make the playoffs, just how much of an accomplishment, even though now it's 14 out of 32 teams. The NFL is a very, very difficult business to win in. Teams are extremely, extremely competitive. And the difference between that middle of the pack, teams that are hovering around 500 and getting to double-digit wins, is exceedingly difficult, even when you have incredible talent at quarterback. Just ask the Los Angeles Chargers after that performance by Herbert last night, right? I mean, It is hard to get over the hump. And so I think you have to recognize just how special it is to make the playoffs and the accomplishment that is in and of itself. You also have to appreciate that gives them a shot to make a run here at the Super Bowl. But that falling short, not getting a championship, to me, that doesn't reflect on the season as a whole. You have to look at the execution of goals coming in. And to have gotten to where they did with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, I do think it validates the strategy that they set out. I was critical towards the end of the year that they rode that 2-quarterback strategy and that it was flawed from the outset. But to have made the playoffs, again, just a couple of plays going the 49ers' way, I do think that justifies the $25 million decision they made to keep Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, I agree. And I said this last week on a stream too. And I do believe that as long as they make the playoffs, it's not a wasted season.
Right.
I think the Super Bowl or bust, the people that talk about the 49ers in a Super Bowl or bust mentality, either know of what was taking place in the 80s and the 90s, or they just feel like anything else. But when the reason that it was like that during that time period in the 80s, 90s, those teams were dominant year after year after year. There was a 16-year stretch that the 49ers won 10 games. I mean,
that's so wild.
That kind of leads you to it, right? And then from there, over the last 20 years, the 49ers have won 10 games 6 times. So you need to learn to walk before you can run. And the 49ers are getting there now. I think we're seeing when they have a healthy quarterback, they can be a pretty good team. I mean,
yes,
whether it's Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance, especially at this point, right? And that kind of leads to the other part of my answer is, you come into it, they've Trey Lance, he only made 2 starts this year. He looked okay in week 5. He looked better in week 17. And so you look at that and it's like, yeah, there's been improvement for Trey Lance, a rookie quarterback who you kind of are building your team around. That gives you hope for the future. Ambry Thomas, it's the guy who was sitting on the bench for the first half of the year, wasn't even thought of. Kyle Shanahan even talked about how didn't even expect him to get on the field. And yet he gets thrust into the starting lineup due to injuries, and he improves week after week until he makes the play that gets sent to the 49ers to the playoffs with the interception in overtime, right? And then, obviously there's Elijah Mitchell, and he goes out there and he sets the franchise record for rushing yards in a season. Obviously, the 17th game helps, but hey, and it's also the second most yards for the 49ers since 2016. And then you look at the sophomore players. Brandon Ayuk stepped up. He got better this year. Juwan Jennings has become a guy who, he started the year off slow. Things have been kind of a little bit of a slow, but I think that I know myself, I was somebody who said the 49ers made a mistake by not re-signing Kendrick Bourne, right? And here's a guy who's gone out and he's replaced him over the last month. He's been able to go out and make play after play and really take on that role and make big plays. And he had 94 yards yesterday in that game. I think it was 94, 96, something like that. And he had 2 touchdowns too. So, and on top, it's the thing with Jennings, he has 5 touchdowns this year, second most on the team, tied with Brandon Ayuk.
Coming up clutch. Yeah, I do think as well, what I didn't realize coming into this season was just how much, and maybe it changed. Maybe this evolved for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, but the strategy around bringing in an inexperienced quarterback who had the least number of college throws out of all of the first-round quarterbacks, I think a lot of us came in with the expectation because you took him 3rd overall, he needs to contribute right away. And either the 49ers just failed to get out their original strategy, what they ended up executing, or they changed course. Because maybe initially, as Steve Young put it, they did put out the wrong messaging, that Trey was going to compete and potentially earn that starting spot. But I think it became clear to them fairly early just where Trey's progression was, and they prioritized protecting Trey above throwing him into the fray and allowing him to learn under fire. And you watch the progression, the leaps and bounds that he grew from that first start to the second start. And I do think you have to give credit. And you have to give credit for them sticking with the strategy all the way till the end of going with what appeared to be a less than 100% Jimmy Garoppolo over the young Trey Lance and getting heavily criticized. I mean, this goes back to giving credit to Kyle Shanahan, but to possess the will to do that and own the results afterward, just really remarkable in my book.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing with Shanahan and Lance and the way that everybody's looked at this. Shanahan was really open from the beginning, right? The 49ers, I think Shanahan and Lynch were both saying, or at least Shanahan, I remember, said that we're not expecting him to come in and start. We're going to take our time with him. It's not, and nobody really believed him. And then you had the start to camp, and I think even the 49ers looked at him and were like, "Well, this guy's really performing pretty well. Maybe he is going to be able to push Garoppolo here for the spot." And then everybody who expected him to start kind of grabbed onto that, myself included. Right. But then as camp wore on, you saw him struggle a little bit more, and you saw Garoppolo kind of pull away a little bit, and you could see the 49ers readjusted and went back to what they had already planned on doing. And it really played off for him. I think it did. I think they're going to be able to come out next year, and I would expect Jimmy Garoppolo not to be a 49er and for it to be Trey Lance's team. And I don't think that they'll have a step back because of the fact that they put Lance through a pretty steep learning curve this year. Let him make all of his mistakes on the practice field instead of on the game field.
Right.
And I think that helped the 49ers this year, and it's going to help them out in 2022 when we get there.
Yeah, and going back again to Steve Young's interview with Matt Mayoko, which I just thought was a fabulous piece. I've been referencing it nonstop since it happened. But I think that when he talks about the ability to get better while on the bench, he describes a very specific style of player, a very specific style of human being, someone who is relentless in their pursuit of getting better, someone who is consistently preparing as if they're going to be the starter. And going back to another Matt Mayoko piece, the story on Trey Lance and his father in combination with the background piece that Matt Barrows did, more members of a phenomenal beat reporter crew, much like yourself with the Press Democrat there, Jack, that you got a picture of Trey Lance as being that type of individual, that his father, an ex-NFL player, put it on him. I will be there for you. I will work out with you every single morning, but it's on you to come wake me up at 5 a.m. or else I'm not getting out of bed. And every morning, Trey Lance did that. And I know it's a nice storyline and maybe some of it is exaggerated, but it's that type of mentality that is needed. And that's what Steve Young is referring to as the type of player who can get better on the bench. I have no doubt that Trey could have made more progress having been on the field, but I do believe it's not a lost season. He absolutely got acclimated to the NFL, the speed of the game, his processing, you could see it speed up from one game to the next. So there is definite trajectory in the correct direction headed into 2022.
Yeah, and the last thing on this, just because there was a question I want to jump to, but you're right. And even when Trey Lance was at North Dakota State, he didn't play his first year there. He was a redshirt. He was practicing. It was all about practice. He was working his way through, and I think he had a couple of snaps in the season, but it wasn't really anything to have caused that be a season for him because of the rules the NCAA has. But he didn't play his first year at North Dakota. He went out as a freshman. The next year as a redshirt freshman and tore it up. Was the best player in the NCAA FCS. Leads him to the championship and all those kind of things. So the thought that he had to play day one in order to get better, I don't think that was accurate. And we talked about that so much, but I'm ready for him to play next year because when he does, I think he's going to be at a very high level.
Me too.
And then Ryan asked the question here. He says, thank you, Ryan, for the donation. Hey guys, I'm still pumped up from this W, 100%. I agree with you there. I really feel this team can make a run. Do you think Jimmy's thumb can hold up?
I would think that if it held up through that game and he comes out this week feeling okay, that's probably the biggest test that he's going to face. Because I would think, barring a collision with the thumb, right? And maybe that's not to be underestimated because defensive linemen are a notoriously... no, I don't want to say dirty bunch, but if you listen to Dennis Brown about it, like they're tomahawk chopping that thing, right? They are coming after it. They know it's an injury. They know if they make contact with it, they can impact the game. I'm not saying that they're all like in Ndamukong Suh where they might grab and twist, but they're all going to be swinging their arms at it and in good faith attempting to dislodge the football. And if the end result is re-injuring that thumb, so that's one thing, but I would say that that's more an anomaly, and I wouldn't expect that to be the case. I think this is the biggest test. How does he feel when he throws for the first time this week after coming off of that performance?
Yeah, how does he feel on Wednesday when they get back to the practice field? Absolutely. And it seems like it was okay. I don't know if he took any big shots on that thumb in the game. It didn't seem like it. I think the biggest shot he might have taken was when Laken Tomlinson tried to give him 5 after the touchdown throw, and I don't know if you saw that video.
I missed that.
Tomlinson goes to hit him, and Garoppolo starts to move it, and then he realizes what's happened, and he pulls his hand back, and it's kind of like, don't hit my hand because you're going to my thumb's jacked up, brother.
The heat of the moment was too much for him.
Exactly. But I think that it'll hold up, and if it doesn't, that's going to be Trey Lance's turn to come in and finish it off. But I think that this team is going to ride with Jimmy Garoppolo, and they're going to ride and die with him. They set this whole year up around him, and they're going to ride with him. And whether you like it or not, jump on the roller coaster that is Jimmy Garoppolo on game day.
Right. And after that week 18 performance, can you blame him? Right. I mean, yes, it was up and down, but you got the win when it was needed. You got to ride with him the rest of the playoffs, barring an injury.
Yeah, exactly. And then this question right here, and let's kind of this jumps us off. We're now looking forward to the 49ers head into Dallas, the revival of really the rivalry that for myself and my 49er fandom and my childhood really was, this was it, right? The 49ers and Cowboys from as long as I can remember, 1981 till the time I was married and everything else was 49ers and Cowboys. And Yeah. So what do you think is more impressive? The 49ers going 10-7 in the NFC West, or the Cowboys going 12-5 in the NFC East? And then we'll jump off of that as well and kind of just give a quick up thought on how this game's going to play on Sunday.
I mean, I have to give the nod to both teams. I think that you cannot scoff at going 12-5, but you must acknowledge that the NFC East is a considerably weaker division than the NFC West. So immediately, 6 of your games were easier than the other teams. And so to pull off an additional 2 wins there, I'm not sure that I'm giving the edge to the Cowboys in that one. Whereas with the 49ers to start the season 3-5 and then to hit that 7-2 run, that to me is the most impressive part of a 10-7 season. To have made that 7-2 push after getting to a point where I think many organizations, many teams would have given up, thrown in the towel, and mailed it in for the remainder of the season. And so because of that impressive run, and because it matters that you're firing on all 8 cylinders as you ride into the playoffs, I'm going to give the nod to the San Francisco 49ers that it's more impressive them going 10-7 in the NFC West after starting 3-5.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think it's 10-7 in the NFC West. I think the Niners record, when you look at the Cowboys, they're a very good football team, but the NFC East isn't the NFC West. The Cowboys are a team that just got beat at home by the Arizona Cardinals, a team that's been scrapping over the second half of the season, just really been struggling. The Cowboys are a very good team, but they have some things that are some weaknesses. And I would say the 49ers match up really well in this game. I think that's why the 49ers are only 3-point dogs here too. A 3-point underdog on the road really means that Vegas thinks it's an even game, right? Because the home team always gets 3 points to start off with. And so the fact that they're at 3, I think really shows where everybody looks at this game. I think the 49ers have some things they can do really well. There's some weaknesses on the 49ers that Cowboys can possibly exploit, the secondary and so on. But I think it's the 49ers are more impressive with their record. I know you look at the Cowboys and you look at the fact they've scored 50 points in 2 of their last 3 games, but then you realize, okay, it's Philadelphia who was sitting a bunch of starters, and it was, I don't remember who the other team was that they did it against. I think it was who was it against? Was it Washington? The Giants?
Sounds right. One of the other NFC East teams.
Yeah, and I think that the team that they did it the first time was kind of in a similar situation to the Eagles. I think they were missing a whole bunch of their players because of COVID, if I remember correctly. So Dallas is a good team. It's going to be a challenge, but I remember month and a half ago having a conversation about who I want to see the 49ers play against in the playoffs, and I think I had said the Cowboys would be one of the 2 matchups I'd want to see out of the first round.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I wanted less travel, and so Arizona, LA were top of the list because with LA, there's a bit of the ownership going on between San Francisco and LA. I'm not a firm believer in Arizona. Hadn't been when they were riding their hot streak, and felt somewhat vindicated to watch them finish out the season as they did. And then Dallas being next on my list because it's not Tampa Bay and because they are a vulnerable team. And you're right, it was the Washington football team that they hung 50 on 3 weeks ago. And then a Philadelphia team that, had, 12 players out from the COVID list. I think that it was interesting to me, Mike McCarthy's decision to play the starters as long as he did in such a lopsided game by the Cowboys. You wonder just how much of that positive momentum they spent in that game, right? I mean, how many plays they left out there on the field that are now on tape for Kyle Shanahan and DeMeco Ryans to look at around defensive scheme for the Cowboys.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's going to be fun. This is going to be an interesting week. Anytime the 49ers and the Cowboys get together, it's always a big deal. It's one of those, even last year, with as bad as the 49ers and the Cowboys were, this is one of those games that you kind of get excited about. I don't know about you, but for me, there's a thing called, I call it helmet games, right? You turn on the TV and you just see these 2 different helmets on the field, and it doesn't matter anything about them. But when you see the 49ers and the Giants on the field, for example, that's what makes you excited, because guys of our age, we remember those battles, in the 80s and 90s. Those were big, tough, games right there, right? And
epic. You want to talk about body bag games? Goodness gracious.
Absolutely. And the same thing with the 49ers and the Cowboys, right? Anytime you see those 2 helmets on the field, I mean, this rivalry goes back into the 70s with the playoff games and so on. And you see these two teams on the field, and it gets you pumped up and excited. The names are all different than they used to be, but hey, 49ers going into Dallas for a playoff game, it doesn't get a whole lot better than that for the first round.
Forget about it.
So it's going to be fun. See what happens on Sunday. I feel pretty confident in the 49ers moving forward. And I base that off of the fact that they hung tough with the number one seed in the NFC. They hung tough with the number one team on the AFC. And here we go now, playoff time, do or die, survival of the fittest, and all those kind of things. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, anytime you can pack your defense and your running game into the playoffs to travel, it gives you a shot. And I think the 49ers have a shot against anyone in these playoffs. And that is a pretty exciting option for 49ers fans to consider. Is it likely they'll make it to the Super Bowl and win this one? No, probably not. But there is absolutely a clear path. There's absolutely a chance. And it's going to be a hell of a lot of fun to watch it as it unfolds.
Absolutely. It's going to be good. And we'll see how it plays out. Real quick, just one quick question, because he sent it about 5 times. So might as well just answer the guy's question. Is Trent Williams going to play? I don't know. We'll find out. I mean, I was surprised by the number of people who yesterday asked me why Trent Williams wasn't playing yesterday. And if you don't know, he had sprained his elbow late in the game against Houston and didn't practice at all last week. And that's why he didn't play yesterday. So we'll see. That's actually a big piece for the 49ers. But hey, that again, the 49ers went into Los Angeles without their best left tackle, without their starting right tackle. They've been doing a good job without him anyway, but without Trent Williams, the guy that's the highest paid left tackle in the league, and you go in there and you beat the Rams, you beat Von Miller, you beat Aaron Donald, you beat, was it Leonard Floyd on the other side, and you beat those guys and you score 27 points with a quarterback with a torn ligament in his thumb. That's a pretty good day.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I was a little bit surprised that Trent Williams didn't go on Sunday after the language that Kyle Shanahan used throughout the week. But then once that was the case and you knew that the elbow was a little bit more severe than he had let on, I just assumed it was gamesmanship. But I am optimistic, given, again, the language that was used last week, that there's at least a chance he makes it out there for this playoff game. You've got to think that he's going to be as motivated as you can possibly be to get right for this game against Dallas.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's you're at that point of the year now. It's whatever you got to do to get out there, and I'd hope to see him out there if at all possible. If it's one of those kind of things, we're back in the old days, right? With there was a certain defensive back for the 49ers who was either to cut off the tip of his finger or not play in the game, and he said, "Go ahead and chop it off," and he did that. He played, and the rest is history. So we'll see how it works out for the 49ers on Sunday, though.
Yes, indeed. I shook that hand, and I mean, that was a trip to see it in person.
There you go. Hey, that's cool. Real quick, we got to jump off the Kyle Shanahan's going to be starting his conference call here in a few minutes. I got to jump over to that, but I want to end by saying thank you very much, Rob, for coming on to my channel and reaching out to me this morning and doing this with me. You're doing a great job with yours and everything that you're doing over on your channel. And it's always fun to talk to you because you always have good takes and you don't give me too much problems for all my stupid ones.
Well, I appreciate that, Jack. It is always a pleasure to be on with you. I love it. And I love the content that you put out over there at 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Anybody who is not reading that on the regular needs to add it to their bookmarks and get in there.
There you go. Thank you. And then real quick, thanks to everybody that joined. We had a pretty good group today for the end of the day, late afternoon on a Monday. Thank you so much for joining. Jump over to Rob's channel. He's going to be coming up at 4:00 today, correct? Is it
yes, 4:00 with Jason Aponte.
So there you go. You must see YouTube TV with Big Rob and Jason, two of the best when it comes to the 49ers content creators on this channel, on this site, excuse me, and just jump over there. Thanks, though. If you could smash that like button for me, comment, subscribe if you aren't already. We'd really appreciate it. I'll be back again throughout the week with all kinds of different stuff. Tomorrow will be the film breakdown. Thursday night's Hammer and Nails, and there might be some other shows mixed in there as well. So thank you everybody for joining. Like Rob said, get over to the site, and we'll talk to you soon.
Cheers.